And we're live. Wicked. Brrr, here we are. Laurie May.
Cool. Why?
Arts management, Bush Bands Bash, The Dirty Word, Red Dirt Poetry Festival, Eco Fair, Totem Theatre President. You run a radio show? You have your own radio show on 8CCC?
I do have a show, yes.
Yep. What else is? I'm sure there's other things you do. That's a ridiculous amount of things that you do.
It is a ridiculous amount of things to do. And I'm writing a book at the moment, working with a community, working on a community memoir from an old fella and poetry and in that community. And I just won the Northern Territory Chief Minister's Award for Volunteer of the Year.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
nice.
Lots of volunteering.
What does that mean? You do lots of work and don't get paid.
Yeah, and they gave me a trophy made of glass.
Amazing. That's amazing. So what, you like an outstanding volunteer, or like you just volunteered for the most? How do you win that?
I don't know. I think you just got to volunteer a lot and be really good at volunteering and get nominated. And, you know, you're up against people that are amazing volunteers in the community. So it was a really big award and really important and really interesting to see an artist win the award. So that doesn't happen very often.
Awesome. Amazing work. I've got two questions. First of all, how long have you been volunteering for? How long has your volunteering career been?
A long time. I was a volunteer journalist in East Africa.
And how'd you get into that? What inspired you to get into volunteering?
I don't know. I guess I've never really been like super driven by money. I've sort of been more driven by, oh, that's something interesting that I would like to do, or I would like to see that happen, or I would like to start that or be involved in that. And yeah, and I guess that's just sort of been the result. In those early days, I was volunteering full time, and overseas, and in order to do that, I was working really, really hard in Australia at jobs that I hated and were meaningless, you know, and saving up so that I could go away and volunteer overseas. And then after a while, I came back and decided that I didn't want to do that. I wanted to work on things that made me, you know, fulfilled me 24/7 all year round, rather than hate my life for a year just to go and enjoy my life for a year. And it was just that too much on off with being happy, you know.
Like splitting yourself into almost like, this is the me that does what I love, and this is the me that does what I hate, to do what I love.
Yeah. Like this is the boring me that has to work in real estate admin and hates everything, and this is like super cool, fun journalist me over, you know. So I ended up working at the NT News in Darwin, which was fantastic, and then moved to Alice Springs 5 years ago and started at the Totem Theatre, and just wanting to really.
You started volunteering or you started working? Volunteering
at Totem Theatre, yeah. And just wanted to start a poetry night. And there wasn't one here. I just wanted to go to one, really. So I was like, oh.
And there wasn't one, so you had to create it yourself.
I did, yeah. And that's been going for 5 years now. Very successful, very great. Everybody loved it. You know, it's a wonderful event. Yeah, and I guess I just kept doing it because I wanted to do it. I've had people offer to pay me for it, to put it under somebody's, you know, a corporate umbrella. But I want the freedom to run it how I want it, and for it to be what it is, and it to be a grassroots thing, and to keep that, it means it needs to be volunteer driven.
Cool. And how long has that been a thing now?
5 years now.
Nice work. Love the initiative. And the other question was, amongst all those things that you do, how do you make the time to volunteer?
I drink a lot of coffee. No, I feel like there's always a lot of time, and I think people may not think they have a time, or, you know, constantly, and, you know, they're time poor. But I think if we look at how we're spending our time, you know, you'll find some. So it's, if you get home from work and it's 5:30 or 6 o'clock and you sit in front of the television for 3-4 hours, that's to me, not really a good use of time. I mean, it might be your way of relaxing, and that's fine to an extent, but when are we over relaxed? Are you, and is that actually relaxing? That's not perhaps active relaxing, that's passive relaxing. It's sitting there being dictated to, rather than finding something that actually,
I think it's beta brainwaves that are activated when you're watching television. So it's definitely not a relaxed state for the brain.
No, definitely. And depending on what you're watching, it might stimulate you in different ways. Whereas
traumatizing you, releasing cortisol if you're watching violence and looking at doom and gloom and all this sorts of stuff. Yeah, it's crazy stuff.
Exactly. But for me, relaxing is going to the theater and looking at something and going, oh, okay, well, we need to fix that, or what do we think about that? And I find that actually quite relaxing. Or gardening, or taking care of my bees, that's relaxing.
It's like doing it mindfully, like you were mentioning mindfulness and yeah, we were talking about earlier before we jumped on live. So is that idea, like meditation? Often people ask me how to meditate and how do I meditate, or say I can't meditate, or that they have this idea that you have to find a quiet place, have to find a pillow, have to sit down, like the environment, the setting has to be exactly precise in order for you to meditate. It's like I'm meditating, kids are running around, jumping over me. I might be walking to the store. I might be like you said, if you're working, it's a meditation, and you get to the point where doing everyday things is actually a meditation in itself. So, how do you incorporate that kind of these presence or mindfulness or whatever you want to call it, relaxation, maybe into your everyday?
Well, I'm one of
everyday crazy activities.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those people that finds meditating. So I also have some chronic illness. I have Sjogren's syndrome and fibromyalgia, and my pain specialist is always telling me that I need to meditate. And I've tried meditating in the sitting, what you think is traditional meditating, and it's potentially not for me. So, I mean, I feel like meditating through being mindful in your activities you're engaged in, whether that's yoga, which I find incredibly calming and soothing and meditative, or whether it is tending my bees, and I know my bees, because you have to be calm. You can't be frantic. Yeah. You can't rush things. You move slowly, you lift things, you pull things. If you were to rush it, if you're in a hurry, you're going to end up with 40,000 bees swarming at your face. It's not okay. So I really enjoy that. People say gardening is really meditative, but I mean, I garden, but I don't find it meditative because I find I'm too mentally involved in all of the different scenarios. So that's why I think bees are good. Anything where you can make something, if you're making something with, easy and simple, repetitive notion. I know people who like knitting as meditation,
100%. And what about in the craziness of it's like translating that mindful or that presence, getting into that flow state, or that, the now, essentially you're being, like you said, there's this hyper awareness, you're moving, you're paying attention to each movement, you're fully present and you're fully focused in the moment on what you're doing. How do you translate that into like the craziness of, say, managing, the theater, or, like in the event management roles that you're in?
It's what I was talking about earlier. Is I practice something. I don't know if it exists. I don't know if I invented it. I have never Googled it. It probably does exist, but I like to call it. What was I saying? Active neutrality.
Active neutrality. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like if I can maintain a neutral response in any situation, whether it's high pressure, low pressure, positive, negative, if I can maintain a sense of neutral, which is calm, not an angry neutral, but calm neutral, then I feel better equipped mentally to handle all of the drama and chaos that's coming my way. And it's when I stop actively being neutral and stop using mindfulness in my life every day that something happens, like I'm locked out of the theatre and I need to get in, and instead of going, okay, this is okay, find another solution, maintain calm, then it's, oh no, I'm locked out of the theatre, and it's that panic, and I, like, what am I going to do? This is the worst, and I feel like you never get anywhere with that response. You're not helping anyone, and you're not helping yourself, and you're not.
But you're running on the wheel, the hamster wheel, yeah.
Exactly, and so I feel like, in particular with Bush Bands Bash has been a new event, and it's one for me, in its 14th year this year. But yeah, approaching that with a sense of calm, I think, has helped, and it was nice. And anything that went wrong, like, I didn't have something.
How many people go to this event? What size event is it?
About 3,000 people.
Well, so it's not small.
No, it's a big event, but the lead up to it is a 4-day intensive training camp with local Indigenous musicians. So you're bringing in all these bands from all these different communities, and we're all out at Ross River rehearsing, and we've got all these wonderful mentors. We had Drew from Carnival, Brian Ritchie from Violent Femmes, wonderful people. And, you might have a moment where, the band, something's gone wrong with the band, or something's gone wrong with the mentor, and rather than kind of just letting things fall apart, and I don't know whether it is potentially a little bit of a cultural thing as well, of just, not letting things fluster you.
What do you mean by cultural thing? Is this you're talking about your own culture?
Yeah, I think I've noticed, like, a lot of Aboriginal women that I work with, like myself, we don't fluster as much. Like, when you're out in community, if something's going wrong, you'll find that there is a level of calm, that sometimes you don't see always in the arts world in particular. We're all very dramatic people, and yeah, so it's sort of, I'm not sure. It's an idea I've been sort of processing.
Toying. So was it neutral reactivity or active neutrality, or was it both?
Active neutrality.
Cool.
It's all about practicing, I guess, that term of mindfulness and being in the situation and actually focusing on that, like, every step of the way, and rather than reacting, going, okay, I'm going to need 2 minutes and then I'll have a response to this situation, rather than going immediate things, stimulus, react. Stimulus comes in, take it, sit with it, figure it out, and then react appropriately or neutrally.
So that process there that you mentioned, that window there, that's the missing link, I find. Like you say, in stimulus and then action, stimulus, react. You just go stimulus, oh shit, the body does something and I need to react. There's a little window and a gap that you had, and you said you sorted it out and you figure that stuff out. What was it always like that for you? And is it learnable, or have you had to learn it? Like, how did you teach yourself, if you did, or how did you learn that to widen that gap and give yourself a moment to go, okay, let me take in all the stimulus that's coming in, the sensation, and then what do you actually physically do? Where is your attention? Do you focus on your breath? Do you look out there? Do you focus on, like, what's your mind actually doing in that moment?
Definitely not something that came naturally to me, and still doesn't. I am a very emotional, reactive person naturally. Like, something happens and I'm just like, what? No, so I think because I looking at my schedule and going, okay, wow, I've got like 3 full-time jobs jammed into, a very short amount of time, and like, how is the best way to handle this? And I realized I was getting, after last year, I had a bit of a breakdown last year on a project. I was so overwhelmed and I was reacting every time something happened. I was taking everything quite personally. Everything was about me. Even then it wasn't. But everything was about me. And everything hurt me personally, and I snapped, and I wasn't in a good place at all. And I realized I couldn't continue operating that way, and it wasn't I guess, best practice, because you can't push yourself for 6 months and then break down and then recover for 3 months and then push yourself for 6 months and break down. Like, it's not okay.
It's not sustainable.
It is not. You will collapse in a heap. So I think, I just sort of was like, what is the best way for me to continue operating in such a capacity? Do I stop doing all the things I want to do, and then I'd be depressed about not being able to do everything, and I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. So I think it was like, well, I need to not react so intensely, and not react, and it's not about, being completely deadpan all the time. It's just managing that reaction and really thinking.
How do you spot it? Like, how do you spot the moment where you're realizing you're reacting and you're not being mindful? Like, because I feel that space. Okay, so you just check in with the heart rate, is it?
Yeah, I notice like something happens and I notice I stop breathing a little bit. Like I'll just, and you get that little panic where you're like, all these things are happening. I'm not in control of these things. Even if you're not as hectic as me, or, and you go to work, you've been on holidays, you've got 300 emails, you get to work, you're like, oh no, what do I do? I'll panic. Or in my case, I tend to procrastinate and not do it. I'll be like, oh no, I'll go do something else. So it's about going, okay, well, no, it's okay. And I think that's something we don't really tell ourselves enough, is it's okay, and it's going to be okay. And it's okay for you to be flustered on the inside, and it's okay for you to feel frustrated. Take a second and then just like go, okay, what is the best way I can do this? What is the most practical way that I can approach this? Do I am I scattershot approach, or is it organized? And I think it's maintaining an organized approach as well, and really thinking through everything you're doing before you do it. But definitely the heart rate is my thing. When I start feeling my heart going a bit faster and my breathing going a bit funny, and that's when it's like, okay, it's time for you to stop. It's time for you to take your breath.
So it's like the awareness is out there, there's stuff happening out there, your focus is out there, and something happens and like, oh, there's something going wrong over at that stage, and this needs fixing, and it's all going crazy. And then it's just, hang on a sec, you just take a minute and actually turn that awareness inside and check on the heart, or you're sort of like always kind of scanning, like what's the
I'm always scanning, and I'm always scanning for drama and problem, and then I see it and I go, oh look, okay, that's the projector screen's broken. Okay, I have the option here of, oh my god, the projector screen's broken, what am I going to do? Oh, this is the worst. Or I have the reaction of not caring at all. I mean, oh, whatever that is. But you need to find a balance there of, okay, so I'm stressed out by this. It's a very stressful situation for me. So, okay, go, well, how are we going to fix this? Okay, we can't fix it. Okay, well, turn it off, move it away. Like, just finding common sense solutions that when you're in organization mode, it's easy to forget and to go into panic mode too easily.
Yeah, cool. It's
so.
Very, very practical. They sound like sound strategies for managing stress and managing state. Our state. It's very effective to check in the breath. The heart rate's the first thing to go, and the blood pressure goes up, and the breath gets shallow. Slowing down the breath is definitely helpful, and that's why I'm practicing, these qigong every day, and that's why I share these kind of practices with people, because it's so helpful across the board. One thing we're always going to be walking around is we're always going to be breathing. All right, we're always going to have breath going through our lungs everywhere, and it's just so accessible because you don't need anything. You don't need a candle, you don't need a pillow, you don't need a incense or whatever it is to meditate and practice that mindfulness, because it's right there with you. Talk to us a little.
It sounds easy, but it's not. And it sounds like common sense.
Well, it's very simple. The ideas are very simple, but definitely not easy. If they were easy, everyone would do it, right?
Yeah. I think it's a lot about not taking on other other stuff that I think there is that you have to sometimes realize what's not yours.
Yeah. Otherwise, that's just neurotic, isn't it?
Yeah, like, oh, okay, someone's having a breakdown about something. Someone's really angry. Someone's angry that they, can't do the thing that they want to do, and you're just like, well, okay.
That leads us into the next thing I want to mention in terms of event management. I know that you work in events, and there's, they're quite successful events, they're amazing events. I've been to them and they're bloody awesome. Talk to us a little bit about, I guess, relationship management and dealing with people, like the people management, and how you navigate different personalities and things like this. What do you find is effective in running successful events in terms of the people?
I find that hang on a second. Nico, can you get the door? Get the door. Yeah. Yeah, so managing relationships is, wow. I think it's really easy to take on board everyone else's drama and everyone else's upset and everyone else's stress, rather than focusing on your own stuff. And I find it's yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So relationships.
Yeah. So what I was saying is, it is really easy to take on board everyone else's problems and somebody else's negativity or somebody else's chaos and drama. And I feel like if you just approach that with the same attitude of that active neutrality of whether somebody is upset with you or the situation, you have to get to a point where you're like, okay, well, that's not it's not mine. It's not my circus. It's, you're doing your thing, and okay. And finding a line between being empathetic without getting involved is really important. But there is a time when I'm managing events where I can't take anyone else's stuff. So if somebody's like, oh, I'm like, all right, I'm very sorry. And actually being able to say to someone, like, I'm really sorry, I don't have the capacity to take that on. This is where my brain is in my capacity. Like, and I know you're upset about, A, B, or C, but there's nothing that I can do right now to help you other than listen. I can listen to you, I can provide you with empathy and support, but I can't get caught up in it, because often we do get caught up. If somebody's angry at someone, and you're like, oh, you come home like, oh, I had a friend that used to message me every morning, and she would say, oh, this has gone wrong and I'm angry at my boyfriend and blah, blah, blah. And I would wake up to this message every day, and I'd say to my partner, oh, right, sorry, this person is upset because of this, or this is happening and this is really a problem. They're really upset. And I would actually get upset too. I would feel that pain, and it was, and it got too much. I got to a point where I was like, I have to put my phone away. I can't take your problem into me at the moment. And that, yeah, it became a thing. So I think that's
is it like drawing solid boundaries in terms of like, it's like letting people know what is acceptable and what isn't not acceptable, and saying, for me, I'd have to tell that person. I wouldn't be looking at putting the phone away. I'd be looking at, hey, if you're going to share messages with me, especially first thing in the morning, please don't make them negative. Make them positive. Send me some, or if you're going to send me negative, send me one positive as well, so we can have a bit of balance.
Balance. Well, I think for me is I don't want to isolate somebody, and it might not be, it might just be in my head, but for me, I'm like, I want you to be able to share that with me. I want you to, but it's how I react to that, which is the thing, because it's not, it's not there. They're not trying to make you react that way. It's that. So I feel it's that focusing once again on your emotions and your reactions, and being like, okay, cool. Like, I'm very sorry. That's how you feel right now. Like, what can I do to support you, without actually making you hurt.
Without taking it on fully. Like, it's like, yes, I'll have a look at it. Thank you. Yep, I understand. And you feel it, but not actually go, oh, I'm going to take that for you. So no,
Yeah.
you can have it. I can see what it is. I don't want it, but thanks for telling me. Let's work through it.
And I think having really clear, direct communication is something that I try and focus on. I do find sometimes, you know, when you're working with someone and you do find a lot of passive aggressiveness in the workplace. And that's something that I'm not very good with.
Nah, that never happens ever. What are you talking about? Never.
And you're like, oh, and
it stems from a what do you call an avoidance, an aversion to conflict, really, doesn't it? It's like people don't want to conflict and they don't want to confront things. Yeah, and confronting things is essentially getting to the truth of the matter, isn't it? And being honest and authentic and vulnerable and raw, which is helpful in relationships. If we have that confrontation, if we don't want to confront things, we're always not looking at them, which means we're blind and we don't know what's going on, right?
Yeah, but I think when people, particularly in the workplace, and you know, it was when they are being passive aggressive, they're actually really upset and they're hurting. You know, and how they're talking to you, like they might be, you know, saying like, oh, but did you really call that person? And you're like, no, that tone is passive aggressive. Don't do that to me. You know, and they're not trying to put you down. And that's the thing that I used to think is they're trying to make me feel bad. Then I was like, no. They don't know how to communicate. They want to know, did you call that person? You know, and it's the difference between that, because and in particular, you know, I feel like it works in workplaces is they don't want to seem confrontational at work. So rather than say, did you actually make that call or did you call that person? They might, you know, phrase it in a way or use passive, couching language. And did you really? And it's like, no. So when I work with people and contractors is I say to them from the start is I prefer direct, clear communication. If I'm not happy with the sound, I'm not going to come up to the sound guy and say, oh, this sounds like maybe a little bit quiet at the back. And like, is there a possibility that you could just like turn it up a little bit? I'm going to walk out the back and be like, it is quiet out there, turn it up. You know, and it's not aggressive and it's not angry, it's direct. And so I do. I'm very clear with people I work with. That's how
they know what to expect, and I think that's what we call expectation management. Having quality expectation management, letting people know what they're going to receive from you, and also then getting it the other way. So if you tell someone what to expect from you, and then you can request that back from them. It's like, oh, cool, everyone's on the same page. There's nothing being hidden from either party. And we're actually two humans who respect each other here, you know. No matter your age, no matter. Say that again, sorry.
Oh, and you'll find the workflow is much better. It's much clearer. There's no problems, and nobody goes home at the end of the night going, "Oh, well, you know, I didn't like the way they said that. What do you think they really meant?" And that's that thing is, what did they really mean? And I feel like we spend a lot of time asking ourselves that from conversations, but what did they really mean by that? Like, what was between the lines? What was hidden there? And I don't think it's necessary, you know, and I think it frees up your mind later to focus on other things, positive things or whatever, if you don't have those little niggling thoughts in the back of your mind. But it's definitely about any situation I approach. I want everyone to know that this is the communication style and this is it. And it promotes a better workplace, I think.
And it's all situational, isn't it? You know, if you're doing a yoga gig or something, a meditation gig, might not be yelling at people. You might be, all right, I'm going to communicate to you in a bit of a softer tone, and I'd appreciate if everyone sort of, you know, was aware of the meditators sitting around us, you know.
You're not going to be like, downward dog now, everyone. Because that would be hilarious, but it probably would not be very calming.
Talk to us about your heritage and your where you live and your culture. You mentioned that earlier. Like, is that an important aspect of your work or your life? And what's it like? Yeah, just in this day and age, carrying that.
Yeah, my mother is from New Zealand, and she moved here 1979 with my father. He's an Aboriginal man from North Queensland. So I was born in a place called Weipa, which is right up the top of Cape York in the Gulf of Carpentaria.
Where, like near Mornington Island, or?
Like as far as you can go.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Just,
like in the corners or in the actual?
Well, you have like the tip, and this is the Gulf, and Weipa is like here.
Okay.
It's very far out. It's very hot. Yeah, and I didn't have much to do with my father, and was raised by my mother in a lower socioeconomic housing commission situation. And
how long were you up there for? So you were born there and you stayed there for how long?
Till I was 4.
Wow.
So not long.
Yeah.
But, my formative shaping years were surrounded by sweat. So
how many people live in Weipa?
I have no idea.
Google. We need to get Google on it. Let's get
Google. I don't know how many. It was not many in 1984.
How do I spell it?
It's WEIPA. And then you can see it, and it's a really far way away. But my father's from near Mackay.
At the moment, there's 3,300 people there.
Wow. There was not that many in 1984.
No.
There was maybe like 500, probably. I don't know. But yeah, there wasn't much there. Lots of fishing, and I just remember mud crabs and sweating. And barramundi, lots of barramundi. I had a lot of fish. So I sort of, I do feel like our background, our experiences shape us and create us and make us who we are and how we operate. Like, for me, being a creative and being a writer as well. So I'm a poet and professional, touring poet.
So you write books, or you do like performance poetry, or?
I do performance poetry, and I make zines. And I just perform at festivals, like Woodford Folk Festival, National Young Writers Festival, Wordstorm. I make my own one, Red Dirt Poetry Festival. It's a big one. And I feel like one of the things when I'm programming events is that I take my background into account. So, and I'm often told, which is really stressful, that I need to charge more for events. So Red Dirt Poetry is affordable. It's $5, $10, or $15, depending on the event. So nothing is very expensive. And the reason we price it that way is because I want people to be able to go to as much as possible, but I also want it to be accessible for as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Whereas I find, in particular literary events, that I find them quite expensive for a lot of things.
Exclusive and
yeah. And when you come from a lower socioeconomic background, and even if you're, aren't anymore in that, you might go, $10 or $20 for a poetry reading. Oh, it's a little bit more than I can afford, because that's potentially, dinner for 4 people.
Yeah.
So it does shape how you approach things. And so I've always taken, my aspect of my life and upbringing into programming events. And I do want to make them affordable and make them accessible, because I think everyone should have arts available to them. And it shouldn't just be this thing that middle class or privileged people can go to, because it might cost a lot, or it's in a place where people don't feel welcome. So I think that's how I let my background influence my decisions when it comes to working on creating events.
Mm-hmm. And that's do you incorporate it into the events themselves in terms of like, I guess like with your it's the pricing and the accessibility of it, but is there any other aspects that you include as well, or is that the only one?
I always want to make sure that events have something that everyone is going to find somehow confrontational or not what they expected. Often I see, you know, with festivals that I've been to is, you know, there's always the Indigenous panel or the Indigenous event.
As in like a separation of it, you mean? Or like it's like that?
Yeah, like you'll find there's 10 poetry readings, and then there's the Indigenous poetry reading, and we're over in the corner, which, I mean, you know, it's always quite nice. I always love being surrounded, you know,
it's
by
quite lovely,
people
actually. It's quite lovely.
with. Okay, cool. And we're on this panel together, great, or reading whatever. But you find the people that go to that panel are people that are familiar with what you're saying or want to hear what you're saying, and have an expectation of what you're going to do. Whereas I find that if you just have, you know, like, you know, a strong, you know, a panel, you know, and it's got just people from various different backgrounds speaking different truths, that you know, you're going to reach a different audience, and you're going to have someone in the audience who's not going to like what you have to say. And that's actually not a bad thing. You know, I did a poetry reading at Woodford Folk Festival, for example, and I was programmed on as, you know, just as the poet, and doing some really strong pieces about Australian history from an Aboriginal perspective.
Do you have, is that something you can deliver to us now? You remember that one?
Not right now. Not on top of my head. There's some videos on YouTube. If you search my name, you can find some things on there. But doing a poem, doing a you know, really strong piece that was, you know, quite aggressive in that, I guess it could be seen as aggressive to some people in that space, and actually having people get up angry and walk out. I mean, that was fantastic.
Well, it's the I was just talking to somebody else who's a professor of poetry or professor of communication, and she's a friend of mine who's moved to the States, and she's a doctor. With her doctorate, she is teaching. What is it called? It's called intercultural communication, and she's a poet essentially as well. So, but she was saying that the whole essence of poetry is to have people think about concepts in an entirely new way, and to look at things in an entirely new way that's never been presented before. So in that situation there, where, you know, people are getting up and storming out, it's, you know, it's affecting people because it's like shocking them out of that way that they've always looked at the thing, you know, and so it's meaning that it's effective. And that's why I personally I love performance poetry, especially when it's done well. A lot of people, there's a lot of people out there not doing it well, but it's, you know, it's a very young thing, so it's going to take thousands and thousands of hours to get good, right? And yeah, when you can bring those aspects, because I was just being a bit of devil's advocate and mentioning, you know, like, she had this idea, like, poetry, the pure poetry, the written form is like, she was struggling to go, I don't know about slam poetry or performance poetry, because it doesn't allow the receiver to actually think for themselves, because it's got performance aspects, it's got, you know, like the attitude and the person's character and the way they deliver it, rather than having someone read it and then having to figure it out themselves and let their mind doing the work. So, but that's what I do love about the performance poetry, is it can hit people like that, and it actually can jolt them out and have that jolt. You know, I was kind of like, yeah, that whole idea of having people think. You know, a lot of people are not inclined to pick up a book, let alone read poetry. You know.
Yeah, and I think that's what I love about performance poetry, is that it's different. It is different, and it's written differently. So, like, a lot of the stuff, if I'm performing it,
I'm really gonna get a bit out of you. I know you got one in your brain.
No, but what was interesting is that one of these people that got angry and walked out of the room came up to me later and said, I was really unhappy about what you were saying. You were disrespecting the Anzacs. And I was like, what? Oh, I was not.
So he wasn't listening to what you were saying.
hang on a second. Like, sorry, can we have a conversation about this? And he's like, yeah, sure. Because I'm upset. And I was like, I understand you're upset and I get that. I'm understanding that. But if you actually like, can we just talk about what I'm saying here? And once he looked at what I was saying and he thought about it a bit more rather than that initial reaction, which is what we were talking about with that, you know, being mindful. If he had have taken a second, gone, hang on, wait, the moment, you know, he would have it. So thankfully he did come and get angry at me later and we could have that discussion, which meant that he got to have his moment where he walked away going, wow, I never knew that. That was educational. And I was like, yeah, cool. I was not in any way, you know, so he obviously got the wrong end of the stick. And that is, I guess, the problem with
lost in translation
is it's because it's quick and it's fast and it's in its moment. People do have the opportunity to take the wrong thing from it.
And that's cool. I like mispronouncing words and saying things that might be a little controversial or, you know, sparking that kind of, oh, I wonder, that's a little bit taboo or that's a little bit edgy, you know. I don't mind stirring that pot a little bit, you know, to get people thinking, go, oh, I wonder what is possible, you
know. Definitely.
What for you, what I'm trying to ask, the what part does it play? What part does poetry itself play in your environment, in your kind of world where you are? Do you see it like having an effect? Because you said that it has an effect with that one person. Do you see it playing a major role or a minor role, like in society or in your own community? Or
yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been working on a project recently with this old fella, passed away in February, and he wrote this little memoir, and he's gotten, you know, hundreds and hundreds of poems, and I'm weaving it together, you know, trying to weave it together with footnotes, and it's very interesting. It's very history driven about Alice Springs and surrounding communities.
So you're dismantling it and taking and like spreading it apart. Is that what you're doing, or?
I'm trying to. I'm more like this. Like
you're condensing it. Okay.
I'm trying to create it into a thing as a manuscript, which will then be published as a book. Is the idea, and people can buy this book. One of the things that he said to me before.
It's written in English or it's written in language?
It's in English, yeah. One of the things he said to me before he left was that he wanted to make sure that I spent time in the community working with the children around poetry and this book, his poetry, but also around getting them to write poetry, because he saw poetry as a really unique way to engage with young people and the world, and as a way of sharing our stories and situations. So I'm taking his sort of approach to poetry in this question, is that he really did feel like poetry was not only an educative tool, which you learn about your poetry, you learn your metaphors and your similes, but you also learn about the world and by doing research and then writing about those things in a creative way. So it's taking all of the stimuli that you can get on a topic and all of the knowledge you possess, combining with the skills you have of writing and creating a piece that's going to speak to you and also speak to people around you and whoever you share that with. And so I was very lucky that I spent 2 weeks out with these kids doing these workshops. And 2 weeks is a long time. You think, 1 hour poetry workshop is fine, but 2 weeks, that's intense. And it was. But the kids wrote over 300 poems in 2 weeks. And they loved it. And they got to not only share their thoughts and views, but they got to develop those. And they wrote some really, really incredible stuff. And they want to share that with the world, because for them, they were saying, yeah, we want, and they're only like 9 years old, and they're telling me, we want people in Sydney to see what our life is like here. And they're going to do that through poetry.
Amazing. And what were they writing about? What were some of the poems?
Oh, we had a lot of kids writing about hunting. It's good.
Yeah.
Good hunting. And yeah, everything from smush dance on hands to beautiful rocky ranges to a lot of introversion. Introversion, is that what introverted?
Introspective.
Yeah, I can't even say it now. That one. About themselves and how they saw growing up in the place where they're living in, which I thought was really, really interesting.
Super fascinating. Yeah, I'm always curious because I don't really know that much about poetry. This is like you're the second person I've spoken to who is a poet on this.
You write poetry.
I do, but I'm not like learned, like I don't know anything about the things. I don't study poetry. I don't know what the different things that I'm doing are. Like I know the words, like you said, metaphor, simile. I know kind of what they mean, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm not learned at all. If someone asks what's poetry, I don't know. It's like words. It's kind of looks like a shopping list, like that's what makes it a poem. But I do know that it's like almost a lost art. Like if you think of the poet, as the poet used to be quite a esteemed person in society, the messenger or the poet. And yeah, just the fact that in this day and age it's a lot easier we get bombarded with so much media that the poet has become less of holds not as much esteem as it used to. And for you,
depends on the country.
Say that again.
I think it depends on the country.
How do you mean? Like what countries?
I've been into some countries in East Africa where poets are very highly respected and it's considered this amazing art form and very, people will, we listen to that poet, he's got something to say. That guy is going to tell you something. And that's what I think I love. And I think, I think definitely in Australia is that it's like, I tell people, what do you do? I'm a poet. And go, okay. So you're unemployed. And I'm like, what? No, wow. So, and I think there are some really amazing people in Australia at the moment that are bringing that back and are working very hard at the poet as the career. And
who's doing this work? Who you talking about?
Luca Lesson, Omar Musa, Candy Royale, Lauren Elizabeth. They're doing really intense and wonderful things at really pushing those messages out there and creating their position as not just as a world reflector, but as a change maker.
Yeah. So in what way, like in what changes are being made through the poetry?
Changing people's viewpoints, so political activism in particular, societal activism. So it's about educating people and two different situations, and it's about creating spaces where people are actually listening to each other, which is something we don't do. We hear each other, but we don't really listen.
What's the difference?
Well, when you hear someone, you're just hearing words and you're just waiting for your chance to respond. But, when you're listening to someone, you're actually taking on board what they're saying and seeing how that interacts with your already held notions and beliefs and understandings of the world and letting them, you can reject them. You might, okay, look, I've taken that on, I've listened, I'm hearing you and I'm listening and processing it and I don't agree. Or you might let it shape you.
Yeah, you're like, hang on, that's a new way of looking at things. And again, it's that coming back to that expanding the view with the poetry, expanding your mind through the word and through receiving. So it's the receiver I think plays a big part in the poetry world. Who I kind of going to just jump around a little bit here. So in terms of like mentors or people that you look up to, do you have any people like that, whether it's events or whether it's just life or whether it's in the poetry scene, or like are there any people that you look up to and you've learned something from? And if there is, what is kind of a couple of key lessons that you've learned from them that come to mind?
My biggest mentor in life is definitely my aunt, who I'm very blessed to have in my life in such a big role. So my aunt runs Kiriata Publicity in New Zealand, in Auckland, and she started in the 70s. She started New Zealand On Film, a magazine, very, very big, and she's works in publicity and has since the 70s.
Since
So
forever.
and I was very fortunate in that I moved out of home at 13, and I went to live with her for a while in New Zealand because she would take me in, which was nice, and grew me up for a bit.
When you say that, it remind me of that story that you're telling it right now. Just remind me of Hunt for the Wilder People. Have you seen this movie?
I do. I love it. It's a great movie.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I don't know if she did the publicity on that. I'll have to check. But she's just brilliant and a very, very no bullshit, direct communicator. And so I think that's where I've learned that because, I feel like a lot of my other family members are very passive aggressive communicators. And so for me, going from that environment to one where it was very clear and direct was very life-changing at that point. And looking at how she worked, and she worked from home. So I was surrounded constantly by, celebrities and really intense artists and arts workers and professionals. And it sort of made me see that world and how everyone worked and interacted. And I still call her constantly, like, I'll call her and be like, oh, somebody hasn't delivered on this contract and I'm not sure what to do. What do I say? And she's like, well, this is what you say, and we'll help. So she's still very much so my key advisor.
What are some of the traits or the philosophies or the principles that she has that you really admire?
Oh, don't get emotionally involved with business. Like just that active neutrality of not being flustered, I think is a big one, because I think often you see people, and I know you see it with events all the time, is you see the manager. The manager is the person running around screaming in a headset, panicking because the world is falling apart on them. And so I think she's always sort of been like, well, no, don't do that, don't act like that. And so I think I sort of do, I think I probably inherited that somehow from her as well. And just sort of managing through that and managing through the chaos and the drama with neutral attitude towards it. But also maintaining the ability to let things go when you need to. I think it's easy to hang on to things and not want to let it go, or hang on to a relationship because you're like, oh no, I can't let this up, this is not okay, I can't let this one go. When really, if it's to the point, if it's not working, it's not working. It might be better to just say, this isn't going to work for us or for me in this way. And being able to have the confidence to say what you want.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And lastly, but not leastly, I know there's something in the memory bank of yours, and we're definitely going to request a little something from you.
Oh. Oh wait, hang on. I'm gonna pull something up on my phone because you've hit me at a peak exhaustion weekend.
That's what I do.
I know. So I had and I'm just going to bring something up. I had a kimchi workshop this morning and then doing the bees, and so poetry is the last thing on my brain. Oh, I have a sweet one. Can I read you a sweet one?
A sweet one. Yes, you can.
It's a little sweet one that I wrote out in community. Watching kids. And so one of the things that I like with poetry is I just write what's happening down.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really beautiful. I think it's a really good way of recording situations and recording things you see. And, in particular working with children is the way that children interact with each other is really beautiful at times. It can be not so beautiful at times when someone's pulling someone's hair or something. But but I love the innocence.
It's a beautiful
Of
thing.
Yeah, and I think capturing that and is the essence to not growing old. So I have a little one. It's watching two girls in the schoolyard. She grabs her face, pulls her ear close to her mouth, only whispers, low hushed tones, inaudible, secrets shared in the schoolyard. Just you and me, yeah? Yeah.
Boom. Boom.
Yeah, nice little one for you.
Boom. Thank you very much. And that's the beauty of it. It's like transports you right there. That's what I love about these poems. It just transports you right there, and it definitely gives you an insight into whatever the experience was. It's a beautiful thing. And what is your take on? Do you encourage, like, how can people find more poetry? How can people get into it? Are you a big advocate of people Are you of the mind that, you know, everyone's a singer or everyone's a poet or has a poet inside them, or do you feel that it's going to be beneficial for people to, you know, try writing poetry or reading it or getting into it or listening to it or watching it? Like,
I think the notion that poetry is for rich old white men is dying, thankfully, by and for. And you still get a bit of backlash. You might, in the poetry world, there's still people who maintain that notion or that understing.
No. This isn't a contemporary thing. No.
And try and shut you out a little bit. So, and so, I've had to stand my ground a lot, and I know a lot of poets, particularly organizing events, have had to really stand their ground to say what is and what isn't poetry. I mean, really, I think. And like I've always said, is that I do try and make sure things are really inclusive and maintain that inclusivity. And so that means making poetry accessible and keeping poetry accessible. And there is so much stuff coming out nowadays that anyone and everyone will get into. And there's always going to be stuff you don't like. And there's always going to be stuff that really speaks to you. And there's going to be stuff that speaks to your heart or your history or your soul or your mind, anything. And there's going to be stuff you're going to hear and you just be like, I don't get that, I don't like that, and that's fine. You're allowed to feel that way. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, thankfully the internet is life changing. This.
Where is there any like websites or anything you can recommend people can find some poetry, or is it YouTube or Google is probably the best ones, or?
Google anything. I mean, poemhunter.com is the mainstream, but that's obviously a lot of historical stuff on there. I advise going to bookshops.
Yeah.
Bookshops are amazing. They have a poetry section in every bookshop. It's very small, but you will find poetry there you like, something you will enjoy. I think there's a really amazing amount of contemporary poets coming out of Australia at the moment that I personally love. So Ellen van Neerven is one of my all-time superheroes. Very excited. She will be coming to Red Dirt Poetry Festival next year. Yeah. But anything she writes, I feel is gold. I haven't read something I don't like. Who do I really like? Oh, Ellen. I'm all obsessed with Ellen at the moment. David Stavanger. Andrew Galland cracks me up every time. He's fantastic. Lauren Elizabeth, I've worked with her on a compilation book. Just a fantastic poet, and I absolutely adore her work as well. So you can Google any of these people. If they don't have a website, they have a Facebook page with their work on it. Celestine Delvin Rowe, she's from Papania, lives in Adelaide. Definitely check her work out. It's raw and intense, and she just tells it like it is. And that's what I think I like poetry that when you have that moment. So
yeah, I know the ones. So, and how can people find you if they want to get in touch with you for anything?
Laurie May is the Facebook page, so you can check that out. The Red Dirt Poetry Fest, it's reddirtpoetryfestival.com is the website for the poetry festival.
reddirtpoetryfestival.com.
Yep. And The Dirty Word is just on Facebook, and that runs out of Totem Theatre and at various other venues as the year goes on.
Yeah, that's the first time you've said Dirty Word. What is Dirty Word? That's the first time.
The Dirty Word is the monthly poetry event.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's the poetry night I started.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can check out the wonderful stuff, bush bands, through the Music NT website, musicnt.com.au.
All of them.
Yeah, so there's
We'll add the links down below. So
yeah, or just come to Alice Springs and ask for Laurie May. Someone's going to know where I am.
Someone's going to find you. Alice Springs. I can't wait to be back in Alice Springs.
When are you coming back?
I should be the end of April, start of May, end of April probably. Yeah.
When what for?
I wonder. Yeah, so definitely we'll catch up then.
Yeah, I missed out this year. I had to go to a wedding, so I wasn't at, as my first was, I've missed since I moved here.
Yeah, we've all got to miss one of them. I've done it. Won't happen again.
I'll be back next year.
Excellent. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you taking your time and giving us a little bit of your energy over here. So definitely we'll do it again.
All right. Well, I'll see you soon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you will. Until next time, guys. Keep the flow growing and the growth flowing.